Hello everyone, I am Talisa with Talisa Aquarist, and today I'm going to be addressing a common myth that I have seen floating around on the internet, and that is that larger betta fish should be kept in larger tanks and smaller betta fish should be kept in smaller tanks. And when someone says larger betta fish, they're typically not referring to a king male betta fish or like a giant betta. They're typically referring to a male betta fish with very heavy fins. So he looks like he has a larger presence because his fins are so large, but in reality he just has very heavy fins. And the smaller betta fish they would be referring to is either a plakat male or a female betta fish. Most females have pretty short fins. Now, while every betta fish is different and each betta fish has different preferences and all that, typically betta fish with shorter fins require a larger tank. Like, I would keep them in a minimum of 10 gallons. And most betta fish with longer, heavier fins prefer a smaller tank because it can cause a lot of stress on them to pull their heavy fins around. So like a heavily planted smaller tank would be great for a betta fish with heavy fins. However, that's not always the case. You know, a half moon male betta fish when he's younger, he may get around very well and he may enjoy being kept in a 10 or even 20 gallon aquarium. However, as he ages, he may be more comfortable in a smaller tank. Same goes with placats. I have a plakat male in a 40 gallon tank. He's doing great in there. However, there is a possibility of him needing a smaller tank as he gets older and just doesn't swim much. Maybe he would be more comfortable in a 10 gallon tank or even possibly a 5.5 gallon tank, depending on how much he ages, how much his body deteriorates before he dies. A betta fish that has shorter fins will typically always be much more active and will be a lot more comfortable in a larger tank. This doesn't mean that they absolutely have to be kept in a tank larger than 5 gallons. I just would not be comfortable with keeping them in a tank that's only 5 gallons. However, a half moon betta fish or a rose-tail betta fish may be a lot more comfortable in a 5 or 10 gallon aquarium. Whereas I have a female betta fish, I've kept her in a 20 gallon most of her life. She loves it. She's very comfortable in a 20 gallon aquarium. However, as I said earlier about each betta fish being different, I do have, it's in this tank right here. I don't know if you can see him. Oh, you can see him right there. That's Finnegan. He is a Dumbo half moon male betta fish. So he does have heavier, longer fins. However, his fins are not that heavy. I feel like he wasn't overbred. I bought him from a more reputable place, so hopefully his fins don't ever become too heavy. And he is in a 20 gallon long. And as you can see, he's swimming around, he's exploring, he's doing great. And prior to that, I had him in a 5.5 gallon tank because, you know, he has longer fins, but he didn't really swim much. And I set up this 20 gallon long, I don't know, a few weeks ago, I think it's cycled now and everything, but I set it up a few weeks ago and I was debating on what fish to put in there. I had thought about putting my large koi male that's in the 40 gallon in there, and I decided to just keep him in the 40 gallon. There was no need to move him out. And then I decided that this tank would look great with like a flowy purple betta in there, so I added Finnegan. And honestly, he is so much more active now and seems a lot happier actually, and I was kind of surprised about that. I figured like, well, if he doesn't do very well, I'll just put him back in the 5.5 gallon. And I actually do have a 5.5 gallon aquarium that I just recently rescaped. Well, not rescaped. I sold the 5.5 gallon tank he was in and just set up a different 5.5 gallon. Sometimes it's just easier to do that. So I did that. I do have an empty 5.5 gallon tank if he becomes lethargic or, you know, gets older and needs a different tank. But he seems very happy in this 20 gallon long. I only have three betta fish right now, and 2 of them are in 20 gallon tanks and 1 is in a 40 gallon tank. They're all very happy. And yeah, like I said before, just because they're bigger doesn't mean they need a bigger tank. Now, when it comes to giant betta fish, absolutely keep a giant betta fish in a large tank, as large as possible, honestly. I mean, you don't need a 75-gallon tank, but I wouldn't, like, you can keep them in a 10-gallon tank, but a 20-gallon would be much better, and honestly they would be very happy in a 40-gallon tank as well. So yeah, just use your best judgment. Not everyone has the space or the stuff they would need to set up a larger tank. So, you know, I guess it just depends on each person. But definitely do not keep smaller betta fish in smaller tanks, please. Now that I've talked with you guys about betta fish and the tanks they're kept in, let me show you guys my betta fish. So first off, here is Finnegan. He is my purple Dumbo half moon betta fish, and he's just gorgeous, and I feel like this tank complements him very well. The tank is not as heavily planted as I would like. It had more plants when I set the tank up, and the water was very cloudy from the play sand. I did rinse it, but it was still very cloudy, and I think whatever was in the water, it just melted off most of my plants. It did not melt off like the Java fern or the Anubias or the sword plant for that matter, but almost all of the stem plants, it melted off. The dwarf sage, I guess, it didn't melt off most of that. Some of it suffered a little bit. All the rotala back here melted off. So I'm thinking, oh, and then I had like a tiger lotus back here that also melted off. It's coming back though, they're all coming back. Oh, and I also had like crypts that melted off. They're just gone now. I think they will come back. So I do need to add more plants. Like, this isn't my ideal betta tank when it comes to the plants. It is a great size for a betta fish, the 20-gallon long. They have more space for swimming side to side. I think I'm going to add like a sword plant maybe right in here, and then add some bacopa throughout here as well. And then I think the crypts will come back, so I'm not planning to add more of those. I'll just have to be patient. But yeah, this is Finnegan. This is his home. And I'm actually surprised he's doing so well in a 20-gallon long. Like, I figured he would be happier in like a 5.5 or a 10-gallon, but he actually swam less in his 5.5-gallon tank, and he was more shy in his 5.5. Like, he just acted maybe like he's a little more stressed out. He is a newer betta fish. I think I've had him for a few months now, and he was in a 5.5-gallon until just recently when I added him in here. I just love watching him swim. He's just so gorgeous. And moving on to over here, this is my 40-gallon tank. The lights are not on super bright yet, but there's also just a lot of duckweed and water lettuce that kind of blocks the light. But in here is Kai. He wasn't listed as a giant, and honestly I don't think he's a giant. I think he's just a larger plakat male. His body isn't very long and he's kind of chubby, but I think he's just gorgeous. I honestly think he is my most beautiful betta fish. I bought him from PNW Bettas, and she sells gorgeous betta fish. You guys should check out her website. She typically will update her website like once a week with new bettas. She isn't, not right now. I think it's because it's so hot. So I don't think she was gonna do any this month, which honestly is kind of too hot in most places of the United States to be shipping betta fish anyway. But yeah, that's where I got him from. I highly recommend you check her out. He is a gorgeous, healthy betta fish. And as you can see, he's kept with some purple haze guppies, and he gets along with them very well. I haven't in the past been overly fond of keeping guppies with betta fish because the male guppies can just be annoying to the betta fish. They're more territorial, the guppies are. However, I think because of the space in this tank and because Kai is just so sweet, it hasn't been an issue. And honestly, these male guppies aren't very old yet. They're still pretty young, so maybe they'll be kind of annoying in the future. I don't know. I feel like they have enough space though that it should not be an issue. I just love watching guppies. They're always so active. I also have a lot of shrimp in here. I'm guessing most of the babies get picked off. I mean, they have multiplied in here, but not at the fast rate that they probably would if the fish were not picking off the baby shrimp. I haven't ever noticed Kai trying to eat adult shrimp or anything. He does good with them, but you know, the babies are just pretty easy to pick off as a snack. But yeah, this is Kai. He has always been in this 40-gallon actually, and he's loved it. He's also newer. I've had him for, I don't know, maybe a couple months. He was the one that I bought, and I kept a female in here, and they bred. They were in here ever since I bought them, so for the last few months or so, 2 months, I don't remember. And sadly, I added some new fish, and those new fish died, and when they died, I think either it introduced a disease to the tank. None of the fish looked sick, so I don't think that was the case. I think it probably just threw the water parameters off, and it killed my female betta fish and my neon tetras that I had in here. So I was pretty sad about that. That's when I ended up pulling, you know, after doing water changes and stuff and getting the tank back to normal. But I ended up pulling these purple haze guppy fry out of my other tank to add in here because there just wasn't any small fish swimming around for me to look at. A super red pleco that I think is just gorgeous. I think it's a female because it doesn't have any like bristles on its face, but I'm not sure. I'm not an expert on plecos. But yeah, as you can see, this tank is not heavily planted for a betta fish, but there's plenty of resting spots for him. Not that he ever rests, honestly. He's super active. I'm not sure where he went, but he does have water lettuce roots to rest in, and that's where he used to build his bubble nest. Let's see if we can find him again. Where did he go? He's typically at the front of the tank, all happy to greet me, but I did already feed them this morning, so he's just off doing his own thing, I guess. Well, I'm not sure where he went. I just got done saying the tank is not heavily planted, but apparently it has enough plants in it that I cannot find the betta fish, so there's that. Also, I think Squishy wants to say hi. She's just been staring at me while I film. I fed her a huge bloodworm this morning, and she is looking quite chonky. Hi, Squishy. Hi, cutie. And over here is a 20-gallon tall that Rainy, my female betta fish, is in. I know it looks like a disaster, but she's happy, I promise. She is in, this is kind of like my holding tank for my purple haze guppy fry. She's looking beautiful in here. She is a half moon female, so her fins are a bit longer than some of your female betta fish that you would see. I need to clean the glass off. There's some there's just a thin line, or like that thin brown algae that just makes it a little bit harder to see into the tank, but she's happy and healthy. She's looking kind of chunky right now. Looks like she's probably holding eggs. But yeah, this tank, it was scaped. I had like a nice piece of driftwood and a bunch of stem plants, and it looked beautiful. And the light turned out to not be bright enough to keep the stem plants alive. So the stem plants all died, which then created a bunch of mulm. And it's pretty hard for me to like gravel vac all the mulm out of the tank because the tank is sitting on the floor, so I don't get enough suction. So, you know, mulm doesn't really hurt anything. So I've just kind of had to leave it. And then I ended up liking the piece of driftwood that was in here really well, and I put that in my axolotl tank. I had some big sword plants in here, and I decided that my 40-gallon tank needed them instead. So this tank is it's just kind of like an uglier holding tank now. I still love to watch it because the fish are so active. And this guppy grass is starting to take over. I think I'm going to get so the reason I had taken plants and driftwood out of this actually was because I had this tank for sale. I have 9 tanks currently, and I was wanting to cut back to like 5 or 6. So I had this tank for sale and this rack for sale, and then this tank that's on it as well. I know this tank looks kind of like a mess right now, but I'm working on it. I realized that the heater was up way too high because in the winter time I had a hard time keeping my tanks warm enough. So then this tank got too hot and the fish are fine, but the plants and the algae just got a little out of hand. But yeah, this is where Rainy, my female betta fish, lives, and I've had her close to a year now. I got her as a small female. She was all stressed. She was like a light blue actually, and then she turned into this beautiful dark blue that's kind of hard to see in this lighting. This tank light is just not very strong. But I've decided to not sell this tank for now. I definitely am not selling Rainy regardless, but I've decided to just kind of keep a hold of both of these tanks and just start putting a little more effort into keeping them looking nice. Obviously the fish are healthy. I haven't neglected them so much that like fish are dying. But this tank could definitely use like some hardscape and maybe a few more plants. And it still, you know, it wouldn't be like a beautifully aquascape tank or anything, but it would be a little more to look at least. Here's a better look at Rainy. Isn't she just beautiful? She's just a very common betta fish, but still gorgeous, I think. This is my 5.5 gallon aquarium that I could add a betta fish to as well. But someone had suggested a pea puffer, and now I cannot get that idea out of my head. I think that a pea puffer would look great in this tank. Because, I don't know, I feel like the tank just, it does not have enough plants in it for a betta fish to begin with. I would need to add more plants. I set this tank up like, I don't know, a week or two ago. I think it's been about a week ago. So this pennywort is starting to melt back a little bit. Some of this rotala is kind of melting back and looking a little rough. The bacopa's looking great though. I've never kept bacopa before and I'm in love with it. I don't know why I haven't bought it before. I'm definitely going to be adding bacopa to more of my tanks. But yeah, this is my 5.5 gallon. Let me know if you think I should just add more plants and keep like a long fin betta fish in here, or if you think that a pea puffer would look nicer in this tank. And this right here is a 10 gallon tank that I actually set up for a betta fish, but then I just ended up adding some snails and shrimp to the tank. I have some blue velvet shrimp and some yellow mystery snails, and I may add a betta fish once the shrimp are reproducing and kind of get a good colony of them going in here, and I wouldn't worry so much about the betta fish picking them off. But this is also a great size for a betta fish, and it's just a nice simple scape. It's honestly very ideal for a betta fish, but I also love shrimp and snails. So for now I just have 3 betta fish, and the rest of my tanks just have other things in them. Do you guys think that I should buy some more betta fish and stock some of my tanks that do not have betta fish in them with betta fish? Or do you guys think that I should stop being such a basic female aquarist that just has a bunch of betta fish? And do you think I should just branch out to try some other species of fish? If you think I should try some other species of fish, please leave your suggestions down in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed getting a look into my betta fish tanks and some of my other fish tanks without betta fish. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If this was helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button.